Is to help you close your speech with punch, power, and persuasion. Please help me welcome Bob Williams. In conclusion, Bob Williams.
My opening was pretty good. And I was going through my speech just fine. I had my 3 points. I remembered every one of them. No notes. It was going so smoothly. And then I came to the end. And all of a sudden, my mind went totally blank. I couldn't remember what my close was. I had memorized it, but it wasn't there in my mind anymore. So I ad-libbed a listless ending. Mr. Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters, and our honored guests. The ending is the most important part of your speech because that's what people are going to remember. You might have a great opening, you might have some good stories, you might have 3 good points, but if your ending isn't good, most likely it won't be remembered at all. I'm going to tell you about 3 speeches which I admire, which I think have tremendous endings. And then I'm going to give you 2 techniques to end your speech and a handout which has a total of 9 techniques. The first ending that I would like to share with you was written by Patrick Henry. He was going before the House of Burgess in Virginia, and the issue before them was, should they arm the Virginia militia against Britain? This was a year before the revolution started, 1775, not 1776. He gave an impassioned speech, and most of you who have been to an American high school probably remember the ending to that speech. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Has a bit of a ring to it, doesn't it? The second speech which I admire was given by a great orator, Winston Churchill. Hitler had conquered every country within the continent of Europe. France had just been overrun. England stood alone. And Hitler said, well, they're probably going to sue for peace and we'll negotiate something out, and then I can go on and conquer Russia and whatever else I plan to do. Winston had other ideas. And in that summer of 1940, remember, the United States wasn't in the war yet. We didn't come into the war for over a year. He basically said, we're not going to give up. We're going to continue to fight. And this is how he ended that speech. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duties, and so bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth shall last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour. Beautiful ending, isn't that? And my final one is a speech which I'm sure most of you are very familiar with. This was given in August of 1963 on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial by Dr. Martin Luther King before 250,000 people that were there in the mall, as well as a TV audience. It changed the course of American history as far as civil rights go. And as he came to that speech, and of course remember his phrase, I have a dream, he quoted from our patriotic hymn, My Country 'Tis of Thee. And it says, in My Country 'Tis of Thee, let freedom ring. Well, he used that phrase, let freedom ring, 10 times. And that repetition was just like a drum pounding in our heads. And finally he said, free at last, thank God we are free at last. Tremendous speech, but also a tremendous ending. I'm trying to analyze now what went wrong with me. Of course, I'm not a Patrick Henry, I'm not a Winston Churchill, I'm certainly not a Dr. Martin Luther King. But I realized the reason why my endings are so bad is because they're an afterthought. I put a lot of care and thought into my openings. I get my 3 points down. I maybe have a little joke or some stories there to kind of enliven things. And then, oh yeah, I gotta have an ending. So I put an ending on there. if I did my ending first, it would all be different and it would be much better. So the first ending I'd like to suggest that you master is the call to action. How do you do a call to action? After you've gone through your the last point of your speech, your main point, go back and summarize. If you have 3 points, you summarize those 3 points right back again. Then the next point is very important. You appeal to the heartstrings. You appeal back to your speech of something that is emotional, because people make decisions based upon their emotions. And then you very carefully craft that final memorable statement to end your speech. Another way to do speech endings, if you don't have a call to action, is to bookend your speech. And I'm going to suggest 5 ways to bookend your speech. You can bookend your speech by referencing the opening. Refer back to what you started with. Maybe it was a movie, maybe it was a quote, or a sentence. You can contrast your concepts, like a mirror image bookend. Your concluding words can contrast with your beginning words. You can ask a question, answer a question. At the beginning of your speech, you ask a question. When you get to the end of the speech, you answer that question. And another real easy way to end, to bookend a speech is to use the same visual. If you're using PowerPoint, use the first PowerPoint to end the speech that you started the speech. If you have a prompt, use the prompt again to end your speech with. But the 5th and final one that I like the most is bookend your speech with a story. You can start your speech with a story, but before you get to the end of the story, right at the climactic part, you stop. You go on with your speech, and then when you get down to the end of the speech, you finish off the story, and that's how you conclude your speech, and that bookends your speech. If you use these techniques, you too can end your speech with punch, power, and persuasion. In conclusion, leave them laughing, leave them thinking, leave them with your message.
Everybody will just take a minute and give Bob some written feedback.